research looking at climate threats to pitches has revealed that 3/4 of pitches used by the top 3 tiers of English women's football are projected to be highly affected. With us to explain this in more detail is co-founder of Green Football, Sarah Jacobs. Hello, Sarah, how are you today? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
How are you getting on? I mean, tell us about this survey that's been put together and your findings, please.
Yeah, thank you. So this is some really interesting research that was part of Green Football's Great Save, a big major national campaign that brings football, the whole of the footballing community together to help tackle climate change, together with Zurich Climate Solutions. And we looked at the 60 geographic locations where women's teams play across the 3 top tiers of English women's football and also the Scottish Women's Premier League, looking over the next 25 years at 2050 to see how badly they will be projected to be impacted by climate hazards. So that might be incredibly strong winds up to 120 miles per hour. It might be floods, looking at depths up to perhaps 2 meters, extended heat waves. So, more than 2 weeks of extremely hot temperatures, or the kind of increasing months of drought that much of the UK is facing. And to have a look at the impact that could have on the women's game, and what we as a footballing community and clubs and leagues and all of us involved could do to help mitigate the damage that could cause.
And how's the findings in that going? And how do you work on that? Because it's quite a difficult thing to tackle, especially when this is your area and your love and your passion. But how do you tackle climate change to not affect that area that you so much love?
Well, so obviously climate change impacts all of us and is going to impact all of us wherever we live. There's a huge amount, though, that we can do as a community, that we can do as individuals, but also that football as a business and that political and business leaders can do to help reduce the projected impact of climate change. That might be, us as individuals making small changes in our everyday habits that can actually, when it's done, we've got 36 million football fans across the UK. If we're all making small changes in our lives, that might be making sure that all the kind of old sportswear we've got in our cupboards doesn't get sent to landfill, which is what the campaign focused on this year. It might be about reducing our energy use a bit. It might be taking shorter showers, or perhaps walking or cycling more rather than driving. That can save substantial amounts of carbon and reduce climate change. And of course, as football, there's a huge, incredible role that football has to play at global level in terms of influence, in terms of their own business decisions, whether that's some of the more controversial issues of teams flying particularly small distances, whether it's clubs getting set up with renewable energy sources, really great systems to help reduce waste at the grounds themselves. There's an awful lot that we can do, as well as looking at, okay, we know some of these extreme weather events are getting worse. What can we do to mitigate that and help protect the women's game, to make sure that, matches aren't cancelled, they're not postponed, that there's no danger to players or to fans watching from the stadium?
And there's a good way, Sarah, I covered this before in the past, a couple of years ago on Green Football Weekend, of what it was called then, but where all of the teams, I don't know if you know this, Rush, where the fans almost can help to win a trophy for the club by being like the best at being sustainable. So I think it was at Man United, maybe one last season.
That's a good memory.
But it's a good concept, because it teaches the kids to make sure you're using the right bins, and then they encourage fans not to take plastic water bottles. They encourage them to get the reusable cup, and then who wants to carry about a cup at a game? So then they kind of invented the fold down cups that are recyclable, and all that kind of stuff. I think they get points, don't you? The teams get point systems, and then whoever wins the cup for being more sustainable. It is something we need to care more about, and football plays a huge part because it gets so many eyes on it.
Oh, massive. I mean, it's one, if not the most powerful kind of cultural force globally, with the billions of people who, are part of it in some way, whether they're watching or playing. And obviously players themselves have a huge role to play in helping raise the issue. It can be a really tricky one. It can feel very far away, even though we're seeing, matches cancelled at the start of this year. We had a group of games linked to the FA Cup fourth round that were cancelled because of storms and flooding. And in Scotland, loads of the women's games were called off this year because of wind. So, you know, there are immediate impacts. You see it a lot at grassroots as well, but there's not necessarily an immediate connection that you make between this is actually more extreme weather due to climate change and what can we do and how can we help make that change, as you said. And yeah, the Green Football Cup still exists. So Green Football's Great Save, which was the campaign this year, has actually just come to an end. The Green Football Cup was part of that. Northampton Town triumphed this
Go on,
year.
Northampton Town.
Yes, the trophy has moved from Manchester United's museum down to them, was presented last week. And the focus of this year's campaign was around this idea of saving kit from landfill. There's 100,000 tonnes of used sportswear that goes into UK landfills every year. And obviously that can take decades to break down, contribute to the emission of methane gas, which is the world's one of the most toxic greenhouse gases. But actually, by keeping, you know, your shorts, your tracky bums, whatever it might be, in play for just an extra 9 months, that can reduce its water, its carbon, its waste emissions by nearly a third. So huge impact just by making small changes. And we saw fans around the country donating old sportswear to communities who need it, to friends and family doing clothes swaps. We were partnering with eBay to encourage more people just to sell on, make a bit of money, and make sure that kit continues to get used. And we had incredibly creative activations by loads of clubs and players using old kit to upcycle stuff. So we had Man U's women making amazing kind of kit bags with local school kids. Nottingham Forest were creating, you know, massive flags for the stadium. We even had one club who turned an entire kind of old hospitality box into this amazing, vibrant place for neurodiverse members of their community. Again, upholstering everything with old shirts and stuff.
So you understand that, but like obviously from experience playing football, and when you're maybe wearing the same kit, let's be honest, like you're working very hard on it. So sometimes the smell cannot come out of the armpits. Therefore, I'm like, you couldn't be possibly wearing another kit for another 9 months, because especially depending on the type of material. But I think then that's good, like if you can maybe save part of the shirt, maybe not under the armpits, and maybe being creative by making flags, maybe that's a good solution. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't be wanting to send all my smelly shirt to people. So I don't know what the solution is with that one.
Well, I mean, sometimes that, you know, clothes obviously come to their natural end, and then it's about trying to recycle them through a textiles bank rather than just chucking them away. But, you know, you talk about materials. That's another really important thing that clubs should and could be considering. You know, what sort of material are they making their kit from? You get clubs like Man City who make their kit from textiles, recycled textiles. So lots of clubs actually make polyester from recycled bottle tops, which is already better than new polyester, which is actually comes from oil and gas. But you know, where you've got certain types of kit which are fully recyclable. They come already from recycled textiles and then can really easily be reused at the end of it as well. So there's loads of different things that clubs could be and need to be considering when it comes to kit, including, you know, on permanent donation schemes. So making sure that any kit that exists within the club, if it's not used at the end of the season, then that's given down either to, you know, lower league teams, or perhaps into community schemes. We've seen some amazing schemes with refugee groups or young kids who otherwise wouldn't necessarily be able to afford the kit that they need to play. And it becomes a huge benefit, obviously for the environment, but also for communities and encouraging more women and girls to play football.
And where, Sarah, can fans and football teams start making a change right now?
Well, so obviously, you can start by going to greenfootball.org. Excuse me. We'll mention a Green Football Weekend. Read me back. Where you'll see all the activity that went on, and also emails where, you know, there's loads of support out there. The campaign has lots of toolkits for clubs, toolkits for grassroots teams, for schools as well, for helping to talk about the issue and to start taking action. The leagues themselves have some good initiatives. The English Football League has their amazing Green Club scheme where they give lots of support to clubs, again, to start putting in those fundamental kind of building blocks. It's really about starting to consider sustainability in all that you do as a club. If you're thinking about that future, what changes are you making? How might that impact from a sustainability perspective? Obviously, there are huge commercial benefits and savings that can be made for clubs as well by putting some of this stuff into play.
Okay, Sarah Jacobs from Green Football, thank you very much. May the journey continue, and hopefully we'll see the rewards very, very soon, and these pitches won't be affected as it's looking like they might be if things continue this way. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. As Sarah says, you can check out greenfootball.org for more information on this.